The American West is defined by its silence. There are roads in Utah where the horizon stretches so far, it feels as if time itself has stopped. It is a landscape of geology, not humanity. A place where things can be hidden in the folds of the earth, and where the silence can swallow a secret whole. In October of 2025, a white Chevy Malibu moved across this landscape. Inside were a mother and her 9-year-old daughter. To anyone passing them on State Route 24, they looked like tourists. A family on an adventure. But if you looked closer, the picture distorted. You would have noticed the wigs. You might have noticed the license plates, which didn't belong to the car. You would have seen a mother driving with a precision that didn't match the casual nature of a road trip. They were driving toward a place called Caineville, but only one of them would drive back. This is not a story about a sudden snap of violence. It is a story about the slow, quiet erosion of a mind, and the terrifying reality of what happens when a parent decides that their child is no longer a person to be raised, but a problem to be solved. Welcome to Quiet Crime Stories. Lompoc, California, sits near the edge of the continent. It is a town of military families from the nearby Vandenberg Space Force Base, and locals who enjoy the quiet, foggy chill of the Central Coast. It is the kind of place where neighbors recognize each other's cars, even if they don't know each other's names. In 2025, Ashley Buzzard and her 9-year-old daughter, Melodee, lived in this quiet. But their silence was different. It was engineered. To understand the end of this story, we have to understand the isolation that preceded it. Melodee Buzzard was 9 years old, but her world was remarkably small. She didn't attend the local elementary school. She was enrolled in independent study, a form of homeschooling that, while legal, effectively removed the daily oversight of teachers and administrators. She had no father in the home. Rolando Meza, known to his family as Pinoy, had died in a motorcycle accident in 2016, when Melodee was just an infant. His death left Ashley a widow, drifting in a sea of grief and financial instability that would slowly begin to drown her. Records show that by 2017, Ashley had filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. But financial ruin is rarely just about money. It is often a barometer for internal chaos. In 2021, the walls of Ashley's life briefly collapsed. She was hospitalized. Reports suggest it was for mental health issues, and during that window, the door to the outside world cracked open for Melodee. She went to stay with her paternal grandmother, Lily Deans. For a brief moment, there was family, there was connection. Lily began the legal process of seeking guardianship, hoping to provide the stability that Ashley could not. But the system favors the biological parent. When Ashley was released, she didn't just reclaim her daughter. She seized her. She abruptly retrieved Melodee and severed all contact with the paternal family. The phone calls stopped. The visits ended. Lily Deans was shut out, left to wonder what was happening behind the closed doors of that Lompoc apartment. Psychologists call this diatic isolation, a closed loop where the parent becomes the child's entire universe. In this vacuum, the parent's reality becomes the only reality. If the parent feels persecuted, the child learns to fear. If the parent believes the world is dangerous, the child learns to hide. For years, the silence deepened. Neighbors saw less and less of them. Melodee became a ghost in her own town. And then, In the first week of October 2025, Ashley Buzzard made a decision. It was not a decision made in a fit of rage or a sudden break from reality. As investigators would later piece together, it was a decision that required logistics. It required capital, and it required a disguise. On October 7th, Ashley walked into a rental agency and rented a white 2020 Chevy Malibu. She didn't use her own car. She didn't tell anyone she was leaving. When she strapped her daughter into the passenger seat, she wasn't just taking her on a trip. She was taking her out of the known world. But the most chilling detail wasn't the car. It was what they were wearing. Surveillance cameras captured them leaving. Both mother and daughter appeared to be wearing wigs. Why? If this were a vacation, why the costumes? If this were a flight from danger, why the slow, methodical pace? As the white Malibu turned east, leaving the safety of the coast for the open desert, the question wasn't just where they were going. The question was, who were they pretending to be? And more importantly, who was Ashley trying to hide from? At the time, no one saw this as a warning. They just saw a white car merging onto the highway, disappearing into traffic. The timeline of a mystery is often measured in seconds. This one was measured in miles. From October 7th to October 9th, the white Malibu traced a nonsensical loop across the American Southwest. They drove through the neon glare of Nevada, down into the heat of Arizona, and finally up into the high desert of Utah. To the casual observer, a road trip is a symbol of freedom. But inside that car, investigators believe the atmosphere was far more claustrophobic. Authorities later uncovered a digital trail that suggested high situational awareness. This implies the driver knew exactly how to avoid detection. Ashley didn't just drive, she vanished in plain sight. Data from traffic cameras pinged the vehicle at various points. But there were gaps, large, unexplained gaps. Police allege that during this journey, the vehicle's identification became inconsistent. The plates seemed to change or disappear entirely, rendering the car invisible to scanning technology. When she parked at motels, she positioned the vehicle carefully, shielding the rear from the view of passing patrols. This behavior suggests calculation, not chaos. A person in a state of confusion rarely has the focus to manage such complex logistics. This was executive functioning. This was planning. We must ask ourselves what Melodee experienced. She was 9. She was isolated. Did she view this as an adventure? Or did she sense the growing tension in the driver's seat? By October 9th, they had crossed into Utah. The landscape here changes. It becomes alien, prehistoric. The cell service drops. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the border captures them one last time. It is the final verified sighting of Melodee. She is seen standing near her mother. There is no obvious sign of distress on the video, but forensic psychology suggests that in these tragic family cases, the danger is rarely signaled by anger. It is often masked by a terrifying calm. The Guardian maintains the facade until the very last second. They returned to the car. They turned onto State Route 24, heading into the vast, unpopulated stretch of Wayne County. The sun was setting on the red cliffs of Caineville. The car stopped. We do not have footage of what happened next. We only have the silence that followed. The location was remote enough that any sound would disappear into the vastness of the cooling air. There was no emergency call made. When the white Malibu started its engine again, the desert was dark. And for the first time for days, the passenger seat was empty. Ashley Buzzard turned the car around. She didn't drive to a police station. She didn't drive to a hospital. She began the long, quiet drive back to California. The most haunting part of this timeline isn't just the loss. It is the composure required to drive hundreds of miles alone, leaving the past behind in the wilderness, and formulating the story you will tell when you return home. November, the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office and the FBI were no longer treating this as a simple missing persons case. They were hunting a ghost. They didn't have a body, but they had data. Modern investigations are rarely solved by footprints in the mud. They are solved by the digital exhaust we leave behind. Detectives pulled the GPS data from the Chevy Malibu's onboard computer. They traced the route point by point, mile by mile. They saw the loop. They saw the stop in Caineville. Simultaneously, they executed search warrants on the Mars Avenue apartment. They weren't just looking for Melodee's clothes. They were looking for the mechanism of her death. In the apartment, they found a spent shell casing, It was a small piece of brass, easily overlooked. But ballistics is a science of fingerprints written in metal. The firing pin of a gun leaves a unique signature on every casing it strikes. They found live ammunition in the rental car, specific brand, a specific caliber. The net was tightening, but Ashley remained free. She was walking the streets of Lompoc, perhaps believing that if there was no body, there was no crime. This is a common fallacy in the criminal mind, the belief that the desert keeps its secrets forever. It doesn't. December 6th, 2025. 2 months after the white Malibu stopped on State Route 24. A couple was hiking near Caineville, scouting locations for landscape photography. They were looking for beauty. Instead, they found the remains of a child. The body was decomposed, ravaged by the elements and time. But the truth remained intact. It took 2 weeks for DNA analysis to confirm what investigators already feared. On December 22nd, the match came back. The remains belonged to Ashley Buzzard. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. On December 23rd, deputies moved in. Sheriff Bill Brown, a man who has seen decades of violence, did not mince words in his press conference. He called the act calculated. He called it an execution. Ashley was taken into custody, charged with first-degree murder. But the prosecutor added a special allegation, a legal term that changes the weight of the entire case. Lying in wait. It implies ambush. It implies that Melodee, in her final moments, did not know she was in danger. It suggests that the person she trusted most in the world had lulled her into a false sense of safety, only to betray it in the most irreversible way possible. On December 26th, 2025, Ashley Buzzard stood before a judge. She entered a plea of not guilty. The legal system will now grind forward. There will be motions, hearings, and forensic testimony. The defense may argue mental health. The prosecution will point to the wigs, the plates, and the silence as proof of a sound, predatory mind. But for the family left behind, the gavel offers no closure. Lily Deans, the grandmother who fought for years to save Melodee, is left with the agonizing what-ifs. What if the courts had granted her guardianship in 2021? What if the school had called sooner? What if the isolation had been recognized as a weapon before a gun was ever purchased? We often look for a why in cases like this. We want a reason: money, revenge, a sudden psychotic break. We want something that makes sense, something that separates us from them. But sometimes, the motive is buried under layers of private delusion that we will never penetrate. We are left with the uncomfortable reality of the closed system. When a parent shuts out the world, they become the author of the child's entire existence. And in the case of Ashley Buzzard, the author decided the story had to end. The road to Caineville is quiet tonight. The wind still blows through the red canyons. The tracks of the white Malibu have long since faded. But the silence Ashley Buzzard was forced into, that remains. It is a reminder to look closer at the quiet houses in our own neighborhoods, to notice who is missing, to ask the question even when the answer is uncomfortable. Because sometimes the only difference between a road trip and a tragedy is who is driving the car. This has been a quiet crime story. If you found value in this analysis, allow us to continue the investigation with you. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We don't chase the loud headlines. We follow the silence. Until next time, stay observant.